On November 8, 2023, the Senate Budget Committee held a hearing to discuss fairness and fiscal responsibility. Ultimately, the hearing was meant to discuss the IRS and their attempt to crack down on wealthy tax cheats, to review evidence and present arguments. 3 witnesses were invited to attend, one being Dr. Natasha Sarin, a professor of law and finance at Yale University. When Dr. Sarin was up for questioning, Republican Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana set forth to discuss a tweet she made on October 30, 2023, regarding the U.S. House and recent proposed legislation. Dr. Natasha Sarin, as she explains, reacted to the proposed legislation and wrote a public tweet that stated it was the stance of House Republicans to support Israel as long as it was made easier for people to cheat on their taxes. That ultimately, it's their belief that these two go hand in hand. What was Dr. Sarin reacting to? A few days earlier, House Republicans proposed approving upwards of $14 billion for emergency aid for Israel's war against Hamas. In turn, about the same amount would be cut from the IRS budget. As such, the IRS funds that were aimed at cracking down on wealthy tax cheats and were used to improve taxpayer service would be cut as a result. This budget reduction could potentially make it easier for people to cheat on their taxes. Senator John Kennedy, in his questioning of Dr. Natasha Sarin, asked if she had in fact talked to all House congressmen and congresswomen before sending out that tweet, that her words were vicious and she needed to have discussed her assumptions on the House Republicans' positions with them before publicly making such a statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to all of our witnesses today. Professor Sarin, you're a professor at Yale Law School?
I am.
Okay. And I see you've been pretty active on Twitter. I'm looking at one of your tweets from a few months ago, October 30th, 2023. I'd like to read it to you. The House Republican stance is, I kid you not, support for Israel as long as we make it easier for people to cheat on their taxes. End quote. Did you tweet that?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. How many Republican congressmen or women did you talk to before you made that statement?
I was reacting to the fact that, and we've talked about it actually.
Yes,
so
ma'am,
far
but
in this.
first, if you could, how many Republican congresswomen or congressmen did you talk to?
I didn't talk to them. I actually was just reacting to the legislation that was proposed.
You didn't
passed.
you didn't talk to any of them?
No, sir.
Before you said that every single one of them supports Israel only if it is made easier for people to cheat on their taxes?
I actually don't think that every single one of them believes
But
that.
that's what you said.
But I do think that the legislation passed by the House reflects a statement of purpose that in order to support Israel, it's
but I'm
important
looking at
to
what you said.
allow
what your
taxpayers to be able to cheat on their taxes.
You said that every single House Republican, none of whom you talked to, would only support Israel if it was made easier for Americans to cheat on their taxes. Now, you said that, and you didn't talk to any of them.
Senator Kennedy,
Didn't you?
I am struck by, and perhaps this is something on which we agree, that it is incredibly important to support Israel. It is also incredibly important to make sure that taxpayers at the top of the distribution
we agree on
pay their
Israel,
fair
but I
share.
just can't believe you would say this about members of Congress. It's pretty pejorative, vicious. Let me finish. Without talking to them. I mean, would it be possible for somebody to support a reduction to the IRS budget because they simply believe the federal government ought to have a balanced budget? Would that be a fair position?
That
Would that be a principled position?
Except that that actually doesn't work with respect to defunding
Would
the
it be a
IRS.
principled position?
It wouldn't be an accurate position because
Okay.
defunding
But you don't
the
know because you
IRS
didn't talk to anybody, did you?
Well,
you just said it.
Defunding the IRS, the CBO agrees, everyone who's testifying today agrees that that is going to add to deficits, not reduce them.
Could it be that a House Republican wanted to reduce the IRS's budget because they think that the IRS is a model of inefficiency and shouldn't be rewarded with more money?
Well,
Could that have been a possibility, a motivation for the way they
Senator
voted?
Kennedy,
In response to Senator Kennedy's question of whether or not she spoke to all congressmen and congresswomen, she had not spoken to a single one of them, nor did she state it was the belief of all House Republicans that a support of Israel coincides with making it easier for people to cheat on their taxes. Senator Kennedy pushes forth with his questions, switching gears to ask whether Dr. Sarin had considered other positions. Could this legislation be related to House members believing in a balanced budget, in avoiding interest rates for the poor, in the belief that the IRS is a model of insufficiency? Senator Kennedy proposed such positions as an alternative to Dr. Sarin's tweet, calling into question the House Republicans' connection between a reduced budget for the IRS and support for Israel.
Could it be that maybe a House member thought that, well, the more money we spend, the more deficits we have, and the more deficits we have, the more pressure is put on interest rates, and the higher interest rates go, the more it hurts the poor? Could that have been
Senator
the position
Kennedy,
of one of the House Republicans?
Senator Kennedy,
Could it have been theoretically?
couldn't have been because
Could it-
everyone
it couldn't have
agrees.
been?
It frankly couldn't.
How do you know? You didn't talk to him.
Well, I know that everyone agrees, including witnesses across the aisle, including CBO, including every single tax expert that has contemplated this question, that defunding the IRS makes deficits worse, not better. And so this is a deficit
I just find it,
measure.
Professor, appalling that you would make a statement like this, a vicious statement like this, without talking to a single person about whom you made this statement. And I'm going to remind you, you know, you can only be young once, but you can always be immature. And you ought to think about that.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Let me just say that I think that the treatment of witnesses is beginning to degrade a bit here. And I'm going to strike some commentary if it continues down this road. I think personal insults to witnesses are not appropriate, and I will not be tolerant of that in this committee.
Well, could I respond, Mr. Chairman? You're going to
Fire away. I think you just called
You're going to
law
do
school
what you got to
professor
do,
immature.
but I'm going to continue to use my time. You bring witnesses as you're entitled to, and some of them are very good. Some of them have the credibility of Michael Avenatti. And I'm going to use my time when I think it's appropriate to
And I'm
test.
going to use my authority as chairman
to test
as I think
credibility,
it is appropriate
witnesses'
as well,
credibility.
in
So
order
you
to
do
keep
what you
order
got to do, and I'm going to
and
do what I got to do.
good behavior in
But if
a
that is
Senate
meant
committee.
to bully me, you're talking
No
to the
attempt to
wrong
bully
guy.
you. No attempt to bully you, none at all. It's to keep the witness and the committee free of bullying.
I'm entitled to test their credibility, and I think one of our witnesses just got tested.
I hope I passed, Senator. Thank you.
You didn't.
Senator Kennedy questioned Dr. Sarin in disbelief over the fact that she had made such a bold statement without discussing it with those it concerned. Without talking to a single congressman or congresswoman, Dr. Sarin put forth the stance of House Republicans, stating they would show monetary support for Israel if it was made easier for Americans to cheat on their taxes. She brought up the idea that a reduction of the IRS budget would inevitably lead to the lack of accountability for Americans regarding this loophole. When asked whether she had considered other possible positions by the House, she responded that they would not be accurate positions. that the proposed legislation did not in fact concern itself with a balanced budget or an avoidance of even higher interest rates, because it was well known among those in finance that reducing the IRS budget would in fact increase deficits rather than the alternative. That it was, in fact, a deficit increase measure to defund the IRS, Kennedy pushes on, demanding that Dr. Sarin's tweet was appalling and had no legitimacy behind it, as she did not turn to the subjects at hand. Instead, she made a bold assumption regarding their position. He continued to drive home the fact that she did not discuss this legislation with a single member of the House. What happened next? Senator Kennedy ended his questioning of Dr. Sarin by saying, "You can only be young once, but you can always be immature. You ought to think about that." In response, Committee Chairman Senator Sheldon Whitehouse gave a stiff rebuke to Kennedy and reminded him that personal insults to witnesses within the hearing are not permitted. Senator Kennedy pushes back that he's entitled to test the credibility of the witnesses. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for all of our latest content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.